Hi, everybody. Welcome to the EDIC meeting of July 21st, 2020. I want to remind you that this meeting will be recorded and replayed on Easthampton Media at a later time. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Easthampton Development and Industrial Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. We will post a record of this meeting on the city's website as soon as we're able, and a recording will be available via Easthampton Media. I will upload that later this evening. The city of Easthampton would like to remind everyone that wearing your mask when you cannot maintain at least 6 feet of social distancing is still very important to prevent a surge of COVID-19 and the need to go back to stricter precautions. Please wear a mask, maintain your space, and wash your hands. With that, Josh sent us a slightly revised copy of the minutes from June 16th. Today, I believe.
Yep, just the addition of one sentence.
Review those minutes. Say again, Josh.
Just the addition of that one sentence.
Right. Which was modifying what again? Tell me. The subgroup for taking up Paul's initiative. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and at the time, the only one, at least one person had volunteered, and that was Chris. So I just wanted to notate that A, it had been formed, and B, that Chris had volunteered.
Okay. Great, thank you. Hi, Casey, welcome.
Casey.
So if you've had a chance to read the revised June 16th, 2020 meeting minutes, can I get a motion to approve them?
So motion.
I have to be able to document this by person's name, so tell me who moved that.
Chris motions.
Chris motions. Any second?
Josh seconds.
Great. Any further discussion? Okay, so if to approve the June 16th, 2020 meeting minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Chris, yes? Okay. So we're gonna, because I saw every person's hand say aye on that. Do we have any nays? Any abstentions? No. Okay. We don't have any members of the public currently with us. So they forfeit their time. I will remind you that this Thursday at 6 p.m., we are having a joint EDIC housing partnership meeting where the housing study consultant will give us a rundown of the preliminary needs assessment. Is that correct, Jeff? All right. I'm pretty amped about this, so I'm excited to see a number of you there. A lot of us will be there. It's going to be a great opportunity to get excited again about what's coming with the housing study and be able to use data to accompany our longstanding sets of anecdotes, which is great. That meeting information is on the city's website. I assume I know for sure, in the Housing Partnerships agenda. And I can send that information out to you all as well as a reminder after this meeting. I may have already sent it to you, but I'll do it again.
So Gwen, that is just primarily, to the best of your knowledge, or Jeff, that's a presentation, some preliminary results from the housing study?
Yeah, it's the work that the consultant is doing is broken down into 3 general parts. So the needs assessment was the first component that really does inform the remainder of the work. So then the second part is a housing production plan. So that's specific to affordable housing. And then the third part kind of has some subparts, but the third part is the comprehensive needs assessment. And that's where we were going to talk about barriers to housing development, doing some site analysis and then their work on helping with the accessory dwelling unit stuff. So I have been asking the consultant for some updates and information. I think the project definitely is slowed a little bit from all the COVID things.
Yep.
So I did get an email from the consultant recently, I think it was last night. She is hoping to provide something in advance. But I think now that the meeting is on Thursday and today's Tuesday, the expectation is just going lower and lower that anyone will have time to kind of review it. So she's preparing to give an overview of the work completed so far, a summary of what is being found. So I think she's going to be ready to do a quick PowerPoint or some kind of presentation and then give both of these groups time with whatever the document is to review it and formulate questions kind of for the next meeting. I think from here on out, it should ramp back up again. I think we kind of hit a lull, and I think we're going to come out of that and start talking about this a lot more frequently.
Okay. So at our last meeting, we had a long conversation about some preliminary thinking about how we might support Easthampton restaurants in particular. At that point, I think the subcommittee's thinking has changed to how we can support Easthampton businesses during this difficult COVID time. So Paul is not with us today. Cassie, do you have an update that you'd like to share?
Talked with Paul, and we thought we'd just give a quick overview of what was discussed. There was concern among the folks on Cottage Street about moving traffic. We also kind of set goals where we wanted to be able to do something quickly, and that particular project had a lot of hurdles. We raised some other ideas, but they all contain logistics that we weren't able that we would be able to achieve within the needed time frame, which would be by the end of summer, because it's not fun to eat outside in November. And we had identified a potential funding source, and I attended the webinar, and it was only available to nonprofit groups. And so we kind of have hit a stalling point, I think. Would you agree with that, Gwen?
I think we've hit a point where now we've come into information that is still limited for me. So Jeff, I'm hoping that you know something that I don't know about the reopening committee, because my new understanding is that there is a survey going out that the reopening committee is helping coordinate. So if you know something about that that could help us think about that, Cassie has written to the chair of that committee to begin a dialogue about that, but anything that you have to share would be useful.
I should not say anything because I don't have anything to add. I was on the same email, I think, Gwen, that you got. There is a reopening committee it's an Easthampton committee. I do understand that they plan to submit a survey to get a better sense of the issues and concerns facing, I think, a wide range of businesses in Easthampton. So I haven't seen a draft of the survey. I don't know that I would see it before it goes out, but to my knowledge, it's not out yet. So, I think just the work of this committee, just even thinking about it is really important. It seems like I think what is important is to start to take a longer view. So for all intents and purposes, it looks like this could last longer than just, this summer. So I think the thought and effort is not really lost at this point. I think it's going to be continuing to just be nimble and see what either becomes available for funding or what appears as needs. I am happy to report that there was a press release yesterday that through the planning department and work with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, that we did get awarded a huge grant to support small businesses. It's a partnership with 6 or 7 other towns. So the money will get spread out, but we got $900,000 to support small business grants. What the objective is to release, you know, an application in mid-September for businesses to apply for up to $10,000. There is some income eligibility requirements because block grant is typically, you know, funding that is related to, you know, lower or middle income, either residents or business owners. So there are some strings attached to this, but we think overall it should be accessible to a fair number of businesses in Easthampton. That's one thing. And then so there are things unfolding, and I think, Gwen, I don't know if it's on your agenda, but there's, you know, a couple other, I think what we should expect is other programs to keep coming out. And I think it's going to be this kind of continuous assessment of, will it work in Easthampton or is there a need? So I think just if one doesn't pan out, I think our expectation is there will be others. So hopefully the survey goes out soon and there's some data that will help drive like what the specific needs are. But
So
I've got a quick question. Is the 900,000 just for Easthampton?
no, so the 900,000 is spread out amongst the other participating communities, but you know, Easthampton and South Hadley are the two larger communities. And so I think that there has to be some kind of equitable way to disperse the funds. I think the expectation is Easthampton and South Hadley would have more available because we have a larger pool of businesses.
Okay.
But nonetheless, it's going to be important. I mean, basically anything that we can do to give funding for people, you know, we're definitely trying.
So Gwen or Cassie or Casey, I'm a little confused specifically about the restaurants, because the goal was to, with Paul's presentation last month, was to try to help expand the outdoor dining. Since then, don't all restaurants have the capability? I'm sorry, capability might not be the right word. Don't they have the legal ability to open inside? They might have to do some reconfiguration, what have you, but to Cassie's point about no one wants to eat outside in November, they do have some percentage of their seating available indoors, I believe, as of now.
But it's hit or miss. People don't want to eat inside either. People don't want to go where crowds are. For us, you know, we haven't had the bar open. We had the bar open this weekend, and it was a nightmare to make. I don't know. She made like a dozen drinks for people, and it's like you need a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, and it's not productive. It's not profitable to try to open up for a small market, you know. And so the restaurants aren't really hungry to like open their doors and bring their staff back to do 50% of sales, you know. Right. So everybody's just being very cautious to see what the market bears, because right now the market is, you know, it's good for the to go, but you know, Mission Cantina is doing great. You know, the places that have, you know, fast casual and good seating are great, but otherwise it's, you know, it's hit or miss. It's the public just doesn't want to go out quite yet. It's the longer view that we have to look at, and we can like rush to judgment to try to get some kind of infusion of cash going to places, but it just means they need to bring employees back, and then if they bring employees back, then they got to give them full-time work. So it's really, I think, the long view is what we need to look at.
So just to clarify, Casey, come the cold weather months, people are going to have two choices: either eliminate the fear of eating indoors, or stick with takeout, or stay home.
Yep. And I think people will come indoors, you know, once the baseball starts happening, once like maybe some schools or maybe some bit of you know, comfort level. I mean, I think the idea is that we don't want people traveling. We don't want to bring people from other communities into my restaurant because Easthampton has been cool, you know, so we don't want to see New York plates and, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And Casey, just anecdotally, I'll tell you, I was, my wife and I, and two other members of our family, so 4 of us were at Easthampton Diner Sunday morning for breakfast. Everybody was eating inside because it was too damn hot outside. and the average age in that group was older than me.
Yep.
So I'm not going to blame it on the older folks that are fearful of going out right now.
I think it's across the board. I mean, I think the young
Yeah.
kids definitely have no problem going out. They have no problem socializing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
going to bite them in the butt.
potentially, you know, but I think it's my average customer is just chilling at home.
Yeah.
So
I want to just add on to what was just said. The subgroup also was concerned about the heavy focus on restaurants. And there are other businesses in Easthampton too that are hungry, like the shops and the artists in the studios. And that's why we tried to think of other events that would incorporate them as well. So, and to that end, Jeff, I'm interested in the methodology of the survey and who it's going to. Is it a sample? Is it the whole community? What is the community and what are the questions? And are they structured correctly? So it's just a kind of interest of mine.
Yeah, I hear you. I think through Gwen might be a good way to have Gwen express some kind of interest on behalf of this group as to understanding the kind of the who's, the what, and the whens of that survey.
So I know a little bit about that survey. I'm sorry to jump in.
Ooh, Chris, good.
It is supposed to be going out pretty soon, maybe Thursday. Don't quote me on that. It's going out to the community at large. It's targeting everyone, I think, but mostly business owners. Again, don't quote me on this because I don't know many details about it. And they're going to be pushing it through all sorts of means. I think that Mo is going to be meeting with somebody there soon, right? Maybe it happened.
Jason Miranda, I mean, I'm talking with him tomorrow at 11. I don't know anything other than that and anything other than the fact that they're putting together a survey. So I have no information regarding it.
But I can tell you that they did a survey for, Jason did a survey for telecommunications committee.
Yes.
That was pretty expensive and very well, I don't know what the word is, answered. A lot of people answered it. So I think that they have some experience with doing this. And I would expect it to be pretty good.
Well, based on the traffic downtown, people aren't afraid to go out. Maybe they're just afraid to stop. Because when you go from Nini's to the Rotary, it's going to take you a while on a day like today.
Yeah, well, but last night, what time was it that I came? It must have been about 5:30, maybe 6:15, 6:30. I came through town, and there was nothing.
Thank you.
But that was Monday, right? So maybe
was Monday, yeah.
It was Monday, yeah.
people have shifted their spending. I know that outdoor gardens and lawn stuff and decks and like that market is just gone crazy. Pool stuff's gone crazy, you know, so people are still out and about. They're just spending in different ways.
Yeah, did you know there's a nationwide shortage of pressure treated lumber?
I waited 3 months for 4x4s.
There you go.
Also charcoal.
I can tell you about, you know, Jeff will be able to add to this, is that ECA is doing a lot of grant money, and the grant money is really meant to get art in the city come the end of August, beginning of September. So we're going to try to do more public art, public music, to try to cultivate a little bit of a scene, more like art walks every weekend, like maybe both Friday and Saturday. So they're trying to do a, you know, a draw for people in the community to be able to be outside. And I think that's where the restaurants and the other businesses can sort of hop on efficient nights, you know, say Wednesday, Thursdays are slow, but they can amp up for busy Fridays and Saturdays. So that's the one thing that I think, you know, we can potentially have our ear to the ground as what partnership can we do with ECA and other organizations to try to promote, you know, safe walking tours and trolley tours or some sort of, you know, you know, get the brew pubs, you know, beer gardens to be full, and then people, you know, go other places.
I think that's good observation, Casey, because I think, you know, that's anecdotally, even though restaurants can open, like yourself and others, they seem to be taking a moderate approach to it. So people are thinking about how this can stay place a little bit longer rather than just turning something over really quick. It occurs to me that I wanted to ask a question, and it's related, so I'm going to try to wedge it in here. But you know, one thing that I apologize, because I think I missed the last meeting, and I'm really it's been harder than I thought to sustain, kind of working from home and just keeping pace with everything that's going on. But in the meantime, I did put forward a zoning amendment that is something that would be of interest to this group. And I did it because I know that there is support for it from a variety of different places. But when Puffer Printing closed on Union Street, kind of abruptly, right at the beginning of like March, or right when the pandemic started, and from that point on, I started thinking about what are we going to do with all these vacant storefronts. So I know it's kind of this discussion generally, but you know, it's not easy for a new person, a new tenant, to get into one of these vacant spaces. You know, they have to go through a planning board process in most cases, unless it's the same exact use. So what I wanted to ask this group is, there's 2 meetings coming up where the planning board and the ordinance subcommittee are going to talk about this on July 28th at 6 p.m. And so I know that that's going to come quick. It's next Tuesday. But then from there, it's going to go to the full city council for their consideration. And I think the date is August 19th. So what I was just going through in my head and looking at the calendar is there may not be another EDIC meeting before the August 19th hearing. So maybe with Gwen's permission, I can send out a little bit of information. I think the most important meeting to go to might be the city council meeting. And just the idea is that the amendment will take out the planning board from the process. And the reason why this is important is because even since Puffer's closed, there is a growing number of vacancies happening. And one of the things that I realized we could do is take out a barrier, so that if there is someone who wants to look at one of these spaces, they're going to have a more direct shot of getting in. And the way that I presented it to the planning board and the ordinance committee is that, you know, someone pretty much has to wait 2 months in the planning board process and has to pay, you know, approximately $400 to $500 in fees just to get in a storefront that, you know, is pretty much ready. So I apologize because I should have brought this up at the last meeting, but I think it's something that's kind of in this vein of what can we do to help. It's kind of just looking ahead at all these vacancies and trying to make it easier for people to get in once they're ready. I have been talking to Taylor Realty and Cannon Real Estate, because they're the main people who are listing these vacant storefronts, and they think it's a good thing. Aside from trying to provide funding for people to make it easier for someone to want to locate in Easthampton, now's a good time to do it. So July 28th is next Tuesday. The planning board and ordinance are going to talk it through, but I think the real emphasis from EDIC could be on August 19th. If there's a little thought process in saying EDIC would support this, you know, as a way to just encourage and make it easier for businesses to locate in Easthampton. It is really kind of in response to COVID, making me nervous to see a lot of these storefronts becoming vacant.
Jeff, excuse me, will they make a determination that night, or are they going to refer it to a subcommittee?
No, August 19th should, for all intents and purposes, there should be a decision on August 19th. And if the city council votes to approve the amendment, it'll take effect the very next day. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't really consult with EDIC, because I needed to hit a couple benchmark timelines to get it in. But August 19th will be a really important date because if city council can approve it, then from there on out, you know, the gist of it is that if you're an existing building and you don't need to make big changes to get into it, you should be able to go right and talk to the building department and start.
I thought we gave blessing to this like 6 months ago.
Did we? We might have.
Yeah, this has been on my radar too for a little while, and it's
I think
because
it's
nobody
maybe
wants to pay
15.
2 months rent
Yeah.
and fees to do what everyone knows they're going to be able to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't think you'll find any resistance here. I probably would go to that meeting.
Yeah, I'll go to the meeting. I mean, I know it's been talked about way back, but like what our building is, because you know we constructed them. We took care of the uses in our permitting then. It's
Yeah.
just so nice. You know, like our mini offices are like hotel rooms. One person moves out, one person moves in. It's not, there's no, you know, and because you have to get them when they're motivated. Before,
Yeah.
you know, you can't have any, you can't introduce any inertia.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're dead on, Jeff. You know, we need to remove as many of those barriers as we can, especially now, and waiting a couple of months now is like an
Yeah.
eternity. We just can't do that.
I think as many of us that could, to your point, Jeff, attend that meeting, but might I suggest that a letter come from Gwen that has us supporting that if we do support it to get to the city council before August 19th?
Our next EDIC meeting is August 18th, so I will have a
Oh.
letter that you will all see beforehand, and you will say, go in peace, and we'll send it that night.
Perfect.
So,
That's great. I didn't know
so
that.
they'll get it in time for that meeting, Gwen?
And Jeff, do you need numbers at the meeting, or is the letter sufficient?
I think at the minimum, the letter would be sufficient, but you know, I think it's just because I think, as David said, it's something that has come up before in this forum. I know, and I think even when Jessica was here, so I did trace it back to 2017. There was a discussion of something very similar, and it just didn't get traction enough to make it happen. So it's always a little bit of a crapshoot. I would not want to request you guys to sit through. I think Tom sat through probably the most epic long city council meeting.
6 hours.
But I don't think they have a lot of things on their agenda. I think I think you serve a couple purposes as the chamber. I think having one or two other people just say something briefly would be helpful. I don't think the amendment is in jeopardy, but I just think it would echo kind of the idea.
Okay, I can be there then if you need me to be there.
And Jeff, on the,
So
on the
that's
flip, on the
gonna be a
flip,
Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a Zoom meeting.
I'll watch it. Yeah.
on the flip side of that, Jeff, you know, again, someone, Casey or Gwen mentioned earlier, the longer range thinking. I noticed that the last first floor apartment on Cottage Street appears to be being converted to a storefront.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I think that's good. It's strange timing, but
Yep.
if we, you know,
Well, because the one next to it is leaving, so but what can you do?
right.
It's
Sorry,
next
can you
next
tell
to
me?
Luth,
Sorry, I missed this.
next to Luthier's, Mo. I think it's a
Yep.
building next. There was still
Oh,
was
yes. Yep.
apartment there that's being converted back to a storefront by the looks of it.
Okay, great. That's great.
Jeff, would you like to, so we've been on an email thread I shared with Cassie and Paul, and the opportunity to participate in the webinar, but there's a program coming out from Mass Office of Business Development about vacant storefront grant money. So you had some thoughts on that. I wonder if this is the venue that you'd like to share those with the group?
Sure, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
There is an opportunity. So it's in the same vein that I think the state is trying to be responsive, and I think we're going to see this kind of continuous unveiling of programs, and it's really going to just be an activity of vetting them a little bit to see what will fit and what won't. There was one that was shared, I think, to this group about it's basically a vacant storefront district, and so if there was a district established, there would be an opportunity for the property owner to get some kind of tax benefit, tax relief, to rent a vacant storefront. On the surface, it sounds really important, especially now as we see a growing number of vacancies. I think my quick observation after reading the criteria were that they currently have set that in order to be eligible for a district, you would have to have a storefront that was vacant for 12 months or more. So unfortunately, what we're looking at is this rapid increase in vacancies. And we have very few, we do have a couple, but we have very few that have been vacant for 12 months. We've been very lucky. Historically, we don't suffer from a large number of vacancies downtown. The three that I came up with off the top of my head that have probably been vacant for 12 months or more is the Moriarty building, the Hurry Scurry building, and there was one more.
The florist shop next to Manchester.
The florist shop next to Manchester. Thank you.
And Bank of America has now been vacant for a year.
Yes. No, and there's little asterisks or caveats on all of these. So like Bank of America went through some kind of process. I think they are just holding I don't know what's going on with that one.
Well, no, Bank of America was bought by Easthampton Savings Bank, and they are talking to two possible tenants.
Okay. So there's some activity with hopefully an outcome because that building's in beautiful, it's in good shape. What I wanted to relay to the group was that Hurry Scurry, the owners of Hurry Scurry have taken some substantial steps, I'd say in the past 6 months. They secured a variance through the ZBA to basically get permission to keep the setbacks that they have and build up. And they modified the lot lines with the planning board through a process it's really just an informal process to change lot lines. But I do think one thing is to figure out if we can establish a line of communication with those folks to just find out if they're still potentially thinking about doing a project. If they are going to do it voluntarily, it would be better than trying to force it, which I know was a previous conversation, or I don't know for sure, but I'm not sure that they'd be looking for tax relief. I think that they already have a program and a vision. So it would really limit us to maybe the Moriarty building. And I just don't know. I don't know. I think we should as a group look at that criteria a little bit more closely to figure out if we have enough to really justify what the Mass Office of Business is looking for. Like, some downtowns have been suffering for years. And I think their program might be oriented towards that. But I think the 12-month criteria, that's the one that threw me off. If they were trying to be more responsive and saying any vacancies, that would really be much more appealing to try to be super reactive.
Jeff, just a couple of thoughts, if I might, Gwen. Is it okay for us to be jumping in, Gwen, I hope? Okay, she gave me a thumbs up. Just, I want to look at this as a glass half full because sure, there's some vacancies, but Hurry and Scurry and Moriarty have been vacant for 12 years, not 12 months. So Those are long-standing issues that are, I wouldn't even chalk those up to COVID related in any way whatsoever. Those have had issues long before COVID was on the radar screen. Even with Puffer, he just decided to retire early. He was going to retire anyway, I think, at the end of the year. So he just pushed up his retirement. And we've seen several of those in the press lately where people were going to retire 12/31 and they pushed it up due to COVID. Sure, that's a big hole on Union Street, but my concern right now has been Shop Row on Main Street, with Taylor Real Estate leaving there. And that's probably going to be a bigger issue to focus on going forward. But, I'm seeing, I mentioned the one who's expanding the storefront on Cottage. The Water's Fine looks like they're expanding into the storefront next to them. Yeah. I'm just not seeing this wholesale vacancy issue. So again, to me, the glass is half full right now.
I think it's a whole vacancy issue. I think just looking at the things that are vacant, I applaud that.
And if there is, some grant money available, and we can figure out what it is, and we sort of approach John Moriarty and say, listen, can can we use these funds to do something to that building? Whether or not it's raise it and put a platform and it's just public space. I don't know. And it's not a blight. I mean, I don't know what the parameters about what the money's for, but if there's some catalyst to make him do something with that property, or, you know, like you said, make it a good looking storefront at least with public art. I don't know. I don't know what the grant money says.
Yeah, because Casey, you're right. He's up to 3 or 4 vacancies on Shop Row, and you know the last thing that he's going to be focused on is you know the Moriarty building. He's
Right.
He's
The
going to be
hardest
trying.
one.
Exactly. He's going to be trying to raise some rents, get some rent money in, you know, to pay the bills on Shop Row.
It's
Can I
interesting.
say-
Go ahead, Mo. Sorry.
Well, I just, you know, as far as the Moriarty building goes and his properties, you know, as Tom mentioned, you know, that's been an issue for ongoing for a while. And I would be thoughtful about how we may be spending our time in searching for grant dollars and that sort of thing, because, and shifting those monies that way. And I know that it's helpful, but there's such a vast group that have been directly affected by COVID. That's kind of like an after on the top cherry gravy kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you follow what I'm saying?
Right, we don't need to think one or the other. Because of the nature of our committee, we get to think about multiple streams and lines. So I don't think that saying, you know what, we prioritize Moriarty over everything is the right way to go. But I think we keep our eyes peeled and say, oh, this is an interesting and creative way we could approach this particular topic. That is something that we've talked about for years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what Casey said, I think there's going to be things that are a straight path, like maybe a conversation with the owner of that Moriarty building and see if they would cut down the shrubs and put up a mural. Like, there are going to be small things that are going to be quicker. There's going to be stuff that's going to be very long-term. So, you know, I just wanted to, you know, I just want to work with this committee as much as possible. I think it's a really important committee. And I think, and maybe it's what Mo said, I think there are going to be some grant opportunities that are, the quicker we can say it's not going to be a fit, the better, just because if you can determine that there's a factor that's going to be prohibitive, then we should establish that and just kind of keep moving on, because I think that we're going to get a flood of these opportunities. And the reason why I'm saying it this way is that there's another one, Gwen. So was there any information shared with this group about the shared workspace, the co-working? You know, what I often do when I get these is I go right to the guidelines and look for the criteria, and I try to figure out if it's going to be feasible and how complicated things will be with the co-working. You know, what I saw was I think the issue that makes it challenging for that one is that it's a 1-to-1 match. So you could get a grant of up to $100,000, but it's a 1-to-1 match, which means that somehow the city would come up with whatever the match is. And I think, as many of you know, the city just doesn't have, unless there's a creative way to match it with another grant. That's how the mayor talks about these grant stacking. It's like stacking grants. But when I looked at that, I'm not sure that we have any data that supports the need for that. I have no knowledge of the need. And then the one-to-one match kind of made me nervous because I don't know of any funding source that would be suitable for that. So kind of like as these grant opportunities come rolling through, just doing like triage to see if there's an opportunity to stick with it and look, or something that creates kind of a flag that would make it prohibitive for Easthampton to do it. So I don't know if anyone else saw anything about that or has data on like co-working spaces.
Oh, you don't have a relationship with any of the co-work spaces in the city?
Sorry, did you ask me that question?
You don't have a relationship with any of the co-work spaces in the city?
The only co-working space that I'm aware of is over in Eastworks, Seth Lepore's space, and I'm not even really sure if he's still.
No, they closed down.
Oh, he did? Yeah. So that's the only workspace that I knew of here in Easthampton.
Do we know?
Quick question.
Others? Aren't there others? I Googled it yesterday and went, there are 3 hits here.
You know, the thing about, I mean, like what I'm finding with our office tenants is that they're holding their breath until next week. Basically, all the monies, you know, whether it be the $600 or the PPP, and you know, a lot of them were kind of hoping that I don't want to say they were in denial, but they were kind of hoping that things would be better by now. And so there's been a lot of come to Jesus in this past week. I mean, I got a lot of you know, in the beginning, some of the phone calls were like frantic, panicky, like just thinking out loud. Then it kind of calmed down, and now I'm getting phone calls where they're actually very calm, but they're like, I think this is the end of the line. And just because no one really knows what's going to happen. You know, we just know it's dragging on, and you know, I'm not going to make any predictions, but we know it's. I think. Well, I'll say one thing. I think we're in the first period. So, you know, and I'm not against any kind of thing we can do, but you know, when we have to match money with data and stuff, we don't have. There's not enough time. It's just, you know, and I don't mean to be critical. It's just that's what's happening.
Dave, I don't know if Jeff said it before or Kate, someone said it about the reluctance for people to open new businesses right now. I mean, you could make it so easy to tell. You could say, here's the key, open up tomorrow, and we'll give you 6 months free rent. And I'm not so sure they're going to open because you're in an environment where there aren't any customers walking through the door.
And everything's still unknown.
What's that, Josh?
And everything is still unknown.
Exactly.
Dave said. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think one of the things, and I think Casey said it, and like thinking in the long term, you know, in the next couple of meetings of this group, maybe there's, you know, maybe we think of other potential strategies that might be, you know, it's like a total anecdote, but there are oftentimes like in a recession, this is a planner talk for a second, but like in a recession is a good time to plan so that you're doing some stuff while it's kind of quiet. It's a really unfortunate situation that we're in, but while it's quiet right now, there might be some things that we could do to prepare, you know, with optimism that things will come out the other end with, you know, with new, you know, people trying to locate in Easthampton, and there might be some things we can do to look a little bit more in the long run to be more prepared when people start coming back in. And maybe in the next couple of meetings, we kind of just talk through a couple of those things. I mean, we're still poised. A lot of our larger projects are on schedule, and, you know, we're going to make sure they don't go away. And the one in particular is the Union Street reconstruction project. So, you know, if we do look on a 2-year horizon, you know, there are probably some things that we can be doing to be ready for when we have a rebound or recovery. And I know it's not inherently related to what EDIC does, but I still have, you know, sites set on the 2 elementary school properties. So, you know, I did apply for some grant funding to help us navigate that process. I haven't heard back, but what we are going to have those two properties to kind of advertise for redevelopment. And so that would be something that this group can help with. There's 2 zoning changes that need to happen to support that. Then Union Street's going to get reconstructed, and we do still want to look at Old Town Hall, you know, and that process should still kind of be underway, and that would really be the anchor for Main Street. So I think as long as we can be optimistic, I think we keep looking ahead and just explore whatever we can keep doing to be ready for a recovery, basically.
I think you're right, Jeff, but I think, you know, like, you know, a lot of this is anecdotal, but like I know 2 people that are giving up their campsites up in Maine. This is not a business, but they were perfectly happy with them. One of them had it for 20 years, but COVID just introduced a change, I guess a lifestyle change. So people are thinking about all kinds of things. But I say, on the other hand, if someone wanted to come in and had a blank slate, if someone wanted to design a restaurant layout right now, knowing that there's COVID, they would design that restaurant differently than they would have designed it 10 years ago. So all I'm saying is, I'm not a restaurateur by any means, in Casey's here, but you want to eliminate, maybe we want to work on eliminating any kind of zoning. Like at one time you had to get an extra permit for a drive up. That kind of stuff should be made simpler. Any kind of little thing in our reception law so that when someone wants to come in and they have some kind of a concept where, I don't know, they have 4 tables inside and 10 tables outside, and it just all kind of flows for them if they're going to do something. Just picking on a restaurant, but it could be any kind of business that has, because the business delivery is going to be different than it has been traditionally. So anything that we can think about that just, like extra curb cut, lesser curb cut, I don't know, any kind of zoning thing, so that they can just kind of just go to the building inspector.
And I think philosophically, Jeff, I would totally agree with you about the optimism. I mean, the buzz about Easthampton isn't going away, because COVID didn't just hit Easthampton, it hit the world. So if our economic situation in Easthampton is going to hit a low point here over the next year or 18 months, so isn't everyone else's. And when we get beyond this in that 1 to 3 year time frame, when there's a vaccine or whatever, and we're beyond this, that same buzz about Easthampton is still going to be there. The difference will be we'll have a beautifully paved Union Street. We'll have a new market on the outskirts of town. We'll be repurposing our schools. We'll have a brand new elementary school. So I think a lot of what's going on right now, thanks, Jeff, a lot of what's going on right now is bringing us to that point where the city's going to be prepared for this beautiful unveiling when the world decides to go back outside again.
I think that's an excellent point. It's like for us, we've got this private dining room that eventually people will be able to eat at, and eventually people will feel comfortable eating. That, we're sort of thinking about strategies to say, well, let's do wine dinners every Sunday night. Let's book those things with the new model in mind. Before we used to just let reservations take it over, it'd be inefficient. To think about ways so we can say there's super efficient nights to help make up for this lull. And I think that's the same thing that he was talking about with the schools and the repurposing. It's like, if we've got this sort of downtime, maybe we focus a little bit more on whether or not it's grant money or, perfect tenants or ideal sort of, housing artist relationship, whatever it's going to be. We can use this time to strategize, better, and not have it sort of catch up to us and be sort of like, oh yeah, and now we have to think about these schools.
We got to plan ahead of time and make things as easy for businesses to get going at 100 miles an hour as soon as they can.
Yeah, I don't want somebody to take over that puffer store and find out, oh, Union Street's going to be chopped up for 6 months. Wow, there goes their sales. You know what I mean? So I know the people on Cottage Street took a huge hit when they did all that work there. So it's sort of like, you want to get the economic engine going, but also could be in the wrong direction, because like Tom was saying, the future is really a year or 2-3 years out to be what normal is going to be.
So we have about 9 minutes left. 8 just turned. There are 3 things I think to minimally discuss. One is there any more discussion that anybody would like to share about what you read about the collaborative workspace program based on our very short discussion here? I'm not sure there's much to discuss. If you disagree, now's your chance.
The only thing I would say about that is that there seems to be a cooperative kitchen space that has been a successful model elsewhere. And that's always has a sense of demand. People want to start up companies. They need access to commercial kitchen. That's the only thing I would say to that factor, is that there has been interest in the Brickyard building. Aaron and Jim and Rachel and I discussed that, and there is grant money for that, and maybe that's the stack thing. But there's definitely the farm, Mountain View Farm expressed interest in having access to it. So that's the one thing that I would see. I certainly don't have the energy to do much input on it, but I could see that gaining some traction.
Okay, thank you. The second thing is, Casey, do you want to have a more formal discussion about how we might coordinate with ECA about public art, public music? You mentioned that casually in passing.
I think it should be on the agenda for next time. ECC is meeting in 7 minutes. And they allocated a little bit of funds to do storefront window. But ECA is definitely putting out like another $10,000 in grant money, and we need a way to promote it because they're primarily either online or storefront or performances, and we need social media help to get word out, and we need potential sponsors to get involved. So it's sort of I don't know how EDIC can help directly, but if we sort of give that information, maybe you guys can come up with ideas that work together.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in more depth in August. If there's other things that you would like to share about that in the meantime, feel free to send them to me and I will forward them out to people. So we have things to think about. And then the third thing is my lame attempt at new business or expanding on this idea of continuing to have some more creative, bold thoughts in the next several meetings as we're thinking about how can we be responsive right now in the moment with all of the uncertainty. And I think a general recognition that this is not going to be over in November. So are there things that you know you would like to put on a future agenda, or shall we just save space for some lull/COVID times discussion at the next meeting?
I think if we have something, we should ask you when we think of it, and then you can add it on.
I will keep asking before the meeting so that you can get stuff put on the agenda.
I have a quick question, just slightly point of order. Jeff, you raised up a lot of points. Can I have those be part of your report, or can I have that be your report? Or do you want me to keep those as part of the Easthampton business during COVID discussion?
I defer to Gwen. I'm fine either way. I appreciate that. I realize I do want to start to give you guys some preview reports. I think we had talked about that a long time ago, but however that gets structured, it's fine with me. Gwen, I don't know if you have a preference.
It seemed to fit.
Why don't we, I feel like we document it by the topics on the agenda, call it good.
Okay.
I think for the next one, if we can put wayfinding project on the agenda, I should have an update for that meeting.
Yep. All right, 4 minutes left. Any other things that you would like to talk about with this group?
I'd like to thank Cassie, Gwen, and Paul for their work on that subcommittee. I didn't participate that much in it, but I know you guys put a lot of work into trying to figure something out. And A for effort, you know?
Oh, thanks a lot, Chris. That's nice of you.
No,
Yeah,
and I think that you could use some of that information potentially in the future, that maybe, you know, part of ECA figures out another cultural chaos type day where it's a moneymaker for the local businesses, and it uses some of the thoughts that you guys put in place. So I don't think all that work is necessarily in vain, because I think they do want to figure out some sort of cultural chaos in the future, because that was a home run. And I mean, gathering in large groups, who knows? But you know, I think that keep the information you guys gathered. I think it's all good.
Under the heading of what I think Gwen or Josh said about throw this out before you forget it, right? While you're thinking of it, thinking ahead a little bit, and Casey, you made me think of it when you mentioned cultural chaos. And again, it's a couple years out, but we ought to be thinking about some kind of downtown grand reopening when Union Street is done. A cultural chaos for the entire business district, from
Easthampton.
Exactly, Cottage, and all those plans that you guys worked on for detours and stuff. Don't let that get too dusty, because that'll come in handy when we want to close down the entire downtown for a grand reopening weekend that might bring tons of people to Easthampton to support the businesses, make Cottage, Union, and Main all walkable for that weekend, however that might work.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
But just think of, you know, it's at least 2 years out, but it would sort of be a grand reopening when Union Street is done.
Quick question while we have Jeff here. Jeff, when is the school reuse committee being formed? Do you have any idea?
I will be very brief. I think hopefully by the next meeting I might have an update. Like I said, I applied for some funding, and the purpose of the funding would be for us to have the same consultant that did the downtown strategic plan to help us facilitate those discussions of a reuse committee and get us going and start the RFP process. So as I try to be optimistic, I'm fingers crossed that if we can get that funding, then that would be the best way to kind of start that process.
Don't we already have all that information? Weren't you able to gather that during the first?
I would describe it as like the framework is there and the framework was established for us, but to get to the finish line is still actually a pretty in-depth process. So if by August 18th, I don't have word on that, then I would probably start to set a course for like this fall to establish the reuse committee and start the conversations going. I mean, I kind of think fall anyway, but it would just be super ideal if we had some consultants who have done this before to help us get through the nitty gritty of the RFP. So I would say the fall time, Chris, like by October.
Okay.
That's my target.
Thank you.
Early on, Jeff, you mentioned 2 elementary schools. Aren't we looking at 3 buildings?
Yeah, sorry. If I meant the 2 elementary school properties.
Okay.
I have started to lump them into at least 2, but it is 3 buildings. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right, y'all. It's 5 o'clock. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Great. We have a second that came before the first. And is there any further discussion of how we should adjourn? No? All in favor? Holler aye. Wave at me.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Show me that you want to go. Okay, Dave, wave to me. Okay,
I
great.
didn't want to go.
Meeting adjourned. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night. You're all smart and great. See you later.
Thank you
Good night.
very much. Take care, folks.
Bye.